But we want to jump right into our first story. As many people saw in the ongoing aftermath of the ceasefire in Gaza, many Gazans have been returning to their homes in the northern part of Gaza. A lot of images are coming out. We are very honored to be joined here on the show once again by Abubaker Abed, who's a Palestinian journalist and commentator in Gaza. Abubaker, thanks so much for being back with us.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Hello. And I'm sure the internet now is good for this time.
You're crystal clear. It's actually fantastic. Excellent. Well, let me ask you this. Give us maybe a sense of maybe the general scene here now, several days after the ceasefire, but also, I saw some of the images you were able to share on social media of what looked like a very amazing moment of many tens of thousands of people returning to their homes in northern Gaza, which they had been told they would never return to. Seems like there was a lot of emotion, a lot of interesting stories. So maybe just give us a sense of some of those on the ground events.
Yeah, as you said, like everyone was literally happy about that because they could never ever imagine it at all. And what they have been through over the past 14 months is absolutely unimaginable. This population has been going through starvation, has been going through a lot in the freezing temperatures, has been displaced in uninhabitable shelters and dilapidated tents. They had no means of life at all. But now, given the fact that they are getting back to northern Gaza, is just a sense of jubilation, a big source of relief and reprieve that is flooding through every one of them, particularly for children, given the fact that the Gaza population, half of it is children. This is their time, children's time to enjoy and relish this moment, this historic moment. And also, we really want to say that for them, that those people have really refused all the plans, have really rejected all the Israelis' plans over the course of the genocide, and they have really stuck together and got united every time during every sort of juncture. It's a very huge and powerful proof of what the Palestinian unity is like and what the spirit of the Palestinians is like. So they are really returning with that sense of jubilation, with that sense of elation, and we could see even people really in tears, children, mothers, families getting together again after Israel separated them very deliberately and brutally during this time. And what was really heartbreaking is that people are returning to absolutely nothing with absolutely nothing, and they are absolutely devoid. Like northern Gaza is devoid of every life means. People are now struggling in northern Gaza because their homes have been destroyed, their neighborhoods have been razed to the ground, and there is nothing. There is absolutely nothing. So they are just restarting this cycle of horror one more time again. So they are displaced even above the rubble of their houses. They are still displaced. They are taking shelter in their tents because Israel is still blocking containers, caravans, and proper dwellings from entering or getting into Gaza, which is an act of genocide, an act of extreme brutality and barbarism. But this is still going, and for them and for every Palestinian, the victory is that we've stayed in this on this land and we've stuck together and we defied all the odds, and this defiance is the biggest sign of what victory looks like, because the entirety, all of us really, are innocent and don't have any weapons at all. We're not a party to this war, but because Israel is a really terrorist and apartheid regime, it's targeting civilians, children, women, and men. We don't have any part in this war. But yes, we continue to hope, we continue to defy the odds, and we continue to stick together and be together until we rebuild Gaza. And again, this is just the first step that will usher in the liberation of the entire occupied Palestinian territories.
Rania, you're muted.
I'm so sorry about that. Abu Bakr, I'm so happy to hear you so clearly, and your reports from Gaza have been so important to follow. And you were talking a bit about the struggle of people's homes and the destruction and kind of, seeing the rubble. I'm also curious if you can paint us a picture of the humanitarian situation in the North, because for so long, the North was completely cut off from the rest of the Strip. They were trying to starve people out of the North. And that's, I think, where, the least amount of aid was getting into. Also, the bombing was so vicious. I imagine that there's probably bodies that are being pulled from the rubble. There was also, I've seen people tweeting about decomposed bodies and bones. I've also seen some videos of people. There was one in particular, you may have seen it as well. Maybe you've met people under these circumstances who have children with them whose parents had been killed, and so they've taken them on as their own children because there's now so many orphans in Gaza. So I'm just curious, in your travels and talking to people, what have you been seeing in terms of that humanitarian situation and just the situation for children who've, gotten either disconnected from their families or lost from their families, and also the number of bodies being pulled out from the rubble?
Well, like Rania, for families who are returning home, they really want to reunite with the other parts families, whether dead or alive. A lot of people here who have come back to northern Gaza are or have united with their families who have been killed by the Israeli military over the course of this genocide. But at least they have seen them, they have really mourned their death, and that's what they really want. For the vast majority of people, this is their story. And this is apart from the fact that there are still thousands of bodies still in rubble. And when we talk about this, I've been talking to people from different parts of the Gaza Strip, particularly around the Netzarim corridor, this corridor that people have been talking about for a very, very long time, and Israel has been pondering over. This corridor had dozens, you're talking about tens and hundreds of bodies around this corridor that have been recovered from under the rubble, and they were not intact corpses. They were just skulls and bones, and those bodies were decomposing. And I saw one of the young men returning to Gaza, particularly in Tel Hawa neighborhood, and he just found the lower jaw of his sister, and he just took this completely decomposed jaw and just buried it into one of the nearby graveyards. So this is the barbarity and brutality of what Israel is about, of course. And for the humanitarian situation, people are now repeating the same scenario. It's just about walking kilometers to get a sip of water or a bite of food, and the demands there are so huge. The people that what is available cannot really meet their needs at all. We talk about now more than 500,000 people have arrived in northern Gaza. Absolutely, they have arrived in completely devastated neighborhoods and residential buildings, and all life means have been deliberately decimated by Israel. The streets, the water infrastructure, and all buildings, all necessities and necessary buildings that can serve this population have been totally taken out of service in Gaza. What people are looking for right now is to rebuild what the devastation that has been inflicted upon their houses and their neighborhoods. But unfortunately, we go back to the same reason that Israel is purposefully denying the access to those proper shelters and dwellings, and denying the access to medications, to food staples and all of these basic necessities. This is what Israel is doing, and this is an outright violation of the ceasefire. And during the 90 hours, what we've been hearing over the course of the past days is constant buzzing by Israeli drones. And this is another breach of what the ceasefire was, how the ceasefire was agreed upon. And this continues, like what people can do. Gaza needs many years, tens of years, until it really stands on its feet again. So who will rebuild Gaza? We need humanitarian efforts, we need international efforts. But until now, Israel is still debating and negotiating over the second phase. So the problem is coming out or emanating from either side. If they don't come from the Hamas side, they come from the Israeli side. But for people, they're still, are resilient, they're still steadfast, they want to live anything. In the end, they have just completely tackled and refused this plan to be ethnically cleansed or exterminated. They're back to where they belong, to the places they were born in. raised in, and for them this is victory, and for them this is what they want and what they have been desiring for a very, very long time. And so a moment they never imagined that it would be possible, but their hope and their unity and their togetherness for people, the humanitarian situation is still deteriorating, but there are hope that something can be done.
No, I think that's a really important point, and certainly the level of steadfastness is so clear. I mean, and maybe I even can already maybe guess the answer to this question, but how, if at all, are people reacting, responding to the statements that were made by President Trump of wanting to quote unquote clean out Gaza and essentially doubling down on the idea that the Palestinians should be forced out and into the Sinai?
Well, I'm not really sure if Trump even cleans his room very well while he talks about what Gaza is looking like at the moment. And I think all of what they have been saying, there's these presidents, these corrupt West everywhere, all of this nonsense. You're not really hear people like this who have all types of torture and all sorts of death over the course of time. You cannot really defeat someone who has lost their entire family, who has really lost their home, their buildings, their work, and everything. You cannot really defeat them. They are still saying that even if the war, I'm hearing from people here, even if the war is resumed, we are going to stay resilient. We're going to stay steadfast, and we are not going to surrender at all. And this is one of the main reasons that Gaza is named the graveyard of the invaders. So there is no wonder and there is no surprise that is called or named like this. And for us, even for the younger generations, what people are reacting to Trump is that we are not going, whatever he wants to do, we're staying here, we are going to endure, and we will continue to endure no matter what happens, because Gaza is planted in our hearts, and our hearts are planted in Gaza. And you cannot really separate this or even dismantle this unbelievable connection. People, when they came back to their houses and to their neighborhoods, they really, really, really kissed the land, the soil there. And this has happened in different parts of the Strip and Rafah. People want to live in completely demolished houses in completely demolished neighborhoods, no matter what, but it's still home for them. The rubble of their houses is still home for them. And tell me, like, if you have any idea, if any president around the world, if any corrupt president, any terrorist president around the world who is still fighting the Gazan people, like, you have tried for 14 months. And by the way, we will not attacked by Israel only. We were attacked by the unity, by the entire European Union and some Arab countries, if not all of them, and almost the entire world. Let me say, almost the entire world has been attacking and exterminating and funding and financing the genocide in Gaza. Tell me, what have they achieved on the ground except destroying civilians' houses, killing the children, women, immolating innocent people, and just completely decimating the healthcare sector and all life needs. Except that they haven't done anything. In the end, after 14 months, the people have returned to their houses, and Israel has been plunged into the area where it was obliged to negotiate over the hostage. So how can you really beat us? This is the question.
Well said. I think that's a very, very well taken point. Sorry, Rania, I didn't know if you were about to jump in.
Yeah, Abubaker, I wanted to ask you, obviously you've been covering this horrific genocide, but you've also been experiencing it. You've watched so many of your friends and colleagues be murdered by the Israelis over the last 15 months. I'm curious if you could maybe tell us your own feelings. I mean, you've told us a lot about the people of Gaza, but your own feelings about everything that's happened since the ceasefire went into effect.
I am honestly, Rania, I am hopeful. I am happy, of course, but I will not rest until Palestine is free, because I'm still a refugee in Deir al-Balah. okay, it's a refugee camp. It's where I was born. It's where I was raised. But I want to go back to Beit Ras, the hometown that my grandparents were expelled from. And I will not rest until that. I want to sacrifice my life for it. I want to do everything for it. That's why younger generations must really do everything. And again, you know, both of you know, everyone who knows Abubaker knows that Abubaker was a football reporter, but he was evolved into more of a war correspondent just for his homeland. And that's what I need to do. So again, I will not leave it at all. And for the ceasefire, I'm really happy that the Israeli genocide has stopped, that this bloodbath has stopped because it's really important. Look, I'm looking at the hospital right now. The hospital is literally empty from war wounded people, from corpses, from tears, from blood. And the ground is very, very clean, not like the other 14 months where people were relentlessly killed in mass slaughter. This be a very significant thing for people that they are now having the time and having the chance to heal up their wounds and to just relax and forget about the pain and grief, their unbearable losses. And for me personally, my aunt's family was wiped out and need really to go to my aunt whom I haven't seen at all during this war, and I haven't consoled her at all. So I really need to go to her and reconsole her and hug her because this is really important for me and for my very dearest friend who was killed during this war, although he didn't have any political affiliations, he was not a part of this war. I haven't seen his grave. I really want to go there and cry and just have that sort of catharsis and vent all the pain that are really concealed over the course of this genocide. That's why the importance of this ceasefire from here, it really comes. And this is not for only for me, for many people, for thousands of people, for everyone. Like everyone in Gaza has a big, big, big tragedy to tell. And their tragedies have been compounded every single day during the last 14 months. For them, now is the time to really rehabilitate and to recover from what has been inflicted upon them for every single day during this genocide. For me, for my family, for everyone, now is the time to relive again, to restore humanity that we've been stripped of because the world has allowed that. The world could not stop Israel from the beginning. Israel was deliberately rejecting the ceasefire deal from the start. This death toll, huge death toll, could have been escaped if Israel really had agreed to the ceasefire deal proposal put on the table by the mediators a long, long time ago. But yes, because people have to understand, people don't need to forget and to forgive what Israel has done, because everyone who's gonna forget or forgive Israel for what it has done during the past 14 months is gonna be as demonic, as really barbaric and monstrous as what Israel is about. So it's really important for us and for me and for everyone in Gaza that we really don't want to get back to the level that we were before October the 7th, because life before October the 7th was also bad, but because we really went through what is unimaginable, we are really desperate and yearning for what was before October the 7th. But we are now in time and in a stage where no life means can be found at all. We are not even we're not even in the stage that before October the 7th, we're even much, much, much lower than that. But we want to rebuild. We want to make sure that we have the freedom, we have the dignity, the tranquility, and all human rights as any other humans around the world. And this is a responsibility that should be put on the shoulders of humanitarian organizations, because again, I believe that they have been a very, very, very dark reason to our suffering alongside the Israelis. And this must be done in the way we see. No one should decide what our future should be like. We decide our future. We decide how Gaza must be like. We are the people, the rightful owners of this land, and we will decide it. We'll continue to fight back against this occupation until we really dismantle it. And that can only be raised by the continued resistance and the armed resistance. Other than that, international laws, etc., all this blah, 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 cannot really do anything, because we've been pleading for people and pleading for the international humanitarian organizations and human rights organizations, but all of them have turned out to be, in the end, just mere facades that serve their own interests and specific categories of this world. So we will continue to hope, we will continue to stick together with the good people and the noble people of the world, like you and like other people around the world who have stood by Palestine over the course of this genocide and the war, until we really live and visit Palestine.
Mm-hmm. Well, as always, Abubaker Abed, Palestinian journalist and commentator based in Gaza, thank you so much for some of your time here on the Freedom Side.
So welcome. Really happy. Bye-bye.